By the time the gym lights dimmed, the moment had already escaped the walls. Clips appeared online within minutes. Grainy phone footage at first, shaky and zoomed in, capturing Manny Pacquiao stepping forward at full speed, and then stopping, off balance, eyes wide in disbelief. No punches, no takedown, no knockout, just a pause. And somehow that pause spoke louder than violence ever could. Social media exploded. Did Manny just lose his balance? That wasn't boxing. Wait, was that Seagal? Millions watched. Then millions more. Experts slowed the footage frame by frame. Commentators argued in podcasts and reaction videos. Some dismissed it as choreography. Others defended it fiercely, but the fighters, real fighters, noticed something different. They noticed the timing. They noticed Manny's reaction afterward. Not anger, not embarrassment, but curiosity and respect. That was the part that couldn't be faked. At a press conference the next day, Manny was asked about it. A reporter leaned forward. Was that a stunt? Manny smiled. No, he said. It was a lesson. The room fell quiet. He didn't overpower me, Manny continued. He didn't hurt me. He showed me how momentum works when you stop fighting it. Someone else asked, so who won? Manny shook his head. That's the wrong question. The clip went viral again, this time with captions like, "Power isn't always fast, and control beats force." Seagal didn't give interviews. He didn't post explanations. He simply disappeared from the conversation, and that made the conversation louder. Meanwhile, gyms around the world buzzed with debate. Boxers tried slowing down their footwork. Wrestlers talked about balance. Martial artists smiled knowingly. One trainer said, "That wasn't about Manny, that was about ego." Another replied, "No, it was about humility." Manny watched the reactions quietly late one night. He replayed the clip again, alone not to analyze the movement, but to study his own face in the moment it happened. He saw surprise, then acceptance, then understanding. Most fighters resisted that feeling. Manny leaned into it. At his next training session, something changed. He moved slower. He listened more. He stopped forcing exchanges. His coach noticed immediately. "You're not rushing anymore," he said. Manny nodded. "I don't need to." Weeks later, Manny spoke at a youth training camp. A young boxer raised his hand. "Sir," he asked, "were you embarrassed?" Manny smiled warmly. "No," he said. "I was educated." The room laughed softly. "Being great doesn't mean knowing everything," Manny continued. "It means staying open when something challenges you." He paused, then added, "The strongest people aren't afraid to learn from anyone." That clip went viral too. Not because of Seagal, because of Manny. Meanwhile, Steven watched from a distance. If he watched at all. He had made his point and stepped away, like a teacher leaving the room once the lesson had landed. One commentator summed it up best. Most viral moments are loud. This one was quiet. And that's why it lasted. The story spread beyond combat sports. Business leaders shared it. Coaches referenced it. Motivational speakers quoted Manny's words. Speed is impressive. Power is exciting. But control changes everything. Manny and Steven never turned it into a rematch. They didn't monetize it. They didn't dramatize it. They let it be what it was. A moment of mutual respect that reminded the world why discipline exists. And as the internet eventually moved on, as it always does, something remained. Every time Manny stepped into training after that, he remembered the feeling, not of losing balance, but of finding a deeper one. And for those who truly understood what they had seen, the message was clear. You don't have to be louder to be stronger. You don't have to be faster to be powerful sometimes. You just have to be aware. The applause faded slowly, like ripples after a stone hits water. People in the gym talked over each other now, excited, confused, trying to explain what they had just witnessed. Some replayed footage on their phones. Others argued in hushed voices, pointing at the floor where Manny had lost his balance. But Manny Pacquiao wasn't listening to any of it. He stood near the corner of the mat, hands resting on his hips, chest rising and falling. Sweat dripped down his face. Not from exhaustion, but from intensity. His eyes stayed fixed on the ground in front of him, replaying the moment again and again. He had gone in at full speed, there was no doubt about that. No hesitation, no mercy, no restraint. And yet, he hadn't felt overpowered. He had felt redirected. Seagal stood a few steps away, speaking quietly with a trainer. His posture hadn't changed. Calm, balanced, unshaken. As if nothing remarkable had happened at all. That disturbed Manny more than the movement itself. Most people celebrated when they surprised him. Most people wanted credit. Steven hadn't wanted anything. Manny wiped his face with a towel and walked over. "I've been dropped by punches I never saw coming," Manny said quietly. "That didn't feel like that." Steven turned to him. "Because it wasn't force," he replied. "It was alignment." Manny nodded slowly, absorbing the words. "A fight usually ends when someone is hurt," Manny said. "But that moment ended before it began." Steven smiled faintly. That's the goal. Around them, people pretended not to listen, but everyone was listening. Manny leaned against the ropes, thoughtful now. "In boxing, we train to push through resistance," he said, "to overpower it." Steven picked up a water bottle, taking a small sip. "In my discipline," he said, "we train to remove resistance." Manny laughed softly. "That sounds easier." "It isn't," Steven replied. "It takes longer." That landed. Manny looked around the gym. The heavy bags, the speed ladders, the mirrors that had watched him train for decades. "I've been fast my whole life," Manny said, "but today, for the first time, speed felt loud." Steven raised an eyebrow slightly. "Loud things are easy to hear," he said. "Quiet things are harder to read." Manny smiled at that. A young boxer nearby whispered to his coach, "Did you see that?" The coach nodded. "That's what balance looks like." Manny turned back to Steven. "When you moved," he said, "I didn't feel stopped. I felt invited." Steven nodded. "Momentum wants direction," he said. "If you don't give it one, it creates chaos." The gym fell quiet again, not forced silence, but attention. Manny bowed his head slightly, a sign of respect deeper than words. "You didn't embarrass me," he said. "You showed me something." Steven returned the bow, equally respectful. "You were open enough to see it," he replied. "That's rare." Manny laughed, shaking his head. "People think champions hate being challenged," he said. "The truth is, we hate being limited." Steven looked at him steadily. "Then you're still growing." Those words hit harder than any criticism. Manny stepped back and clapped his hands once. "All right," he said loudly. "Everyone relax." The gym breathed again, trainers moved, but nothing felt the same. Conversation stayed hushed, thoughtful. Manny walked toward the center again, motioning Steven to follow. "Show me the step," Manny said, "the one where everything changed." Steven hesitated. "Only if you want to learn," he said. Manny smiled. "That's exactly why I'm asking." They moved slowly this time. Steven demonstrated the foot placement, the angle, the timing. Manny copied it, awkward at first, then smoother. "Again," Manny said. Steven corrected him gently. "Less effort," he said. "More awareness." Manny tried again. This time, he smiled. "I feel it," he said. "I'm not chasing anymore." Steven nodded. "Now you're listening." A cameraman lowered his equipment, whispering, "This isn't footage anymore. This is history." Manny turned to the room one last time. "This," he said, pointing between himself and Steven, "is why martial arts exist, not to dominate, but to understand." The room answered with quiet respect, and as Manny and Steven continued moving, slow, deliberate, focused, one thing became clear to everyone watching. The real impact of that moment wasn't what the cameras captured. It was what Manny would carry forward long after the gym lights went dark. The gym went completely still. No laughter, no whispers. Only the faint hum of cameras recording and the sound of Manny Pacquiao's breath slowing as he prepared himself. One more, Manny had said, full speed. Everyone knew what that meant. This was no longer a friendly test. This was Manny Pacquiao. The fighter who overwhelmed champions. The man whose speed rewrote what people thought was humanly possible. Manny lowered his center of gravity. His feet bounced lightly, barely touching the mat. His eyes locked onto Steven Seagal. Not with doubt now, but with sharp respect. Steven stood calmly across from him. No stance change, no visible tension. Just stillness. A trainer quietly muttered, "He's not moving." Someone else whispered, "That's impossible." Manny exploded forward. The distance vanished in a blink. His footwork was flawless. An angle change into a sudden burst, the kind that left opponents swinging at empty air. But Steven didn't retreat. At the exact moment Manny committed, Steven shifted. It wasn't fast. It was precise. Steven stepped slightly off the line of attack, his torso rotating just enough to let Manny's momentum pass him. One hand guided Manny's wrist downward. The other brushed his shoulder, not forcefully, not aggressively. Controlled, Manny felt it instantly. The world tilted. His feet slid half an inch too far. His balance broke. Not violently, but undeniably. In less than a second, Manny found himself turning, trying to recover, his body no longer where his mind expected it to be. Gasps ripped through the gym. Manny staggered 2 steps forward, then stopped himself. He didn't fall, he didn't stumble. But he lost control. Silence hit like a shock wave. Steven released his hands and stepped back. No follow-up, no dominance, just space. Manny turned around slowly, disbelief written across his face. He exhaled sharply, then laughed. Short, breathless, genuine. "Yes," Steven replied calmly, "and I went nowhere." That's when the room reacted. Trainers spoke over each other. Cameras moved closer. Even seasoned fighters stared openly now. That wasn't strength, someone whispered. That was something else. Manny rolled his shoulders, grounding himself. He stepped forward again, raising a hand, not to attack, but to stop the moment. "Wait," he said. Steven paused. Manny looked at him carefully. "You didn't counter," he said. "You didn't finish." Steven nodded. There was no need. The words landed heavier than any punch. Manny smiled, but his eyes were serious now. "Do it again," he said. "Slow." Steven nodded once. This time, Manny moved at half speed. He stepped in deliberately, observing Steven's posture, his feet, his breathing. Steven guided the movement again. Small adjustments, subtle redirections. Manny stopped himself. "I feel it," Manny said quietly. "You're not stopping me, you're letting me stop myself." Steven's voice stayed calm. When someone loses balance, they defeat themselves. The gym was completely silent now. This wasn't a challenge anymore. It was a lesson. Manny straightened and bowed his head slightly. "I've trained my whole life to move faster," he said. "No one ever taught me how to move less." Steven returned the gesture with a slight nod. "But calm controls speed." Manny laughed again, louder this time, shaking his head in disbelief. "I've been hit harder than that," he said. "But that shook me more." People finally reacted, applause, murmurs, astonished laughter. Not the loud kind, but the kind that comes from genuine amazement. A trainer stepped forward. "That wasn't boxing," he said. Steven turned to him. "No," he replied. "And boxing isn't this." Manny stepped closer now, extending his hand. Not as a fighter, but as a student. Steven took it. The handshake was firm, respectful. Equal cameras flashed. Phones recorded. The moment spread instantly across social media feeds. But the most powerful reaction wasn't online. It was Manny's expression. Not embarrassed, not defeated, enlightened. He stepped back and addressed the room. "Different arts," he said, "Same discipline." Steven nodded. "Different paths," he replied. "Same truth." The gym slowly filled with sound again. People talking, replaying what they had just seen, trying to explain it to themselves. But deep down, they all knew the truth. They had just witnessed something rare. Not a win, not a loss, but a moment where mastery met mastery, and both recognized it. And as Manny wiped sweat from his brow and smiled once more, one thing was clear. What happened next would stay with him long after the cameras were turned off. The gym felt different now. What had once been laughter turned into cautious silence. Even the air seemed heavier, as if everyone instinctively sensed they were about to witness something unexpected. Manny Pacquiao stepped toward the center of the mat, rolling his shoulders loose. Years of discipline showed in every movement. Balanced, light, explosive. This was a man whose body reacted faster than thought itself. Seagal followed, unhurried. No stretching. No warm-up, no theatrics. Just calm steps and steady breathing. A trainer whispered, "He's not even getting ready." Another shook his head. "This won't last 5 seconds." Manny smiled again, friendly but focused. "Just movement, right?" he asked. Steven nodded. "No punches, no strikes. You come as you are." The cameras circled closer, someone muttered. "This is crazy." Another adjusted focus, sensing viral gold. Manny took a light boxing stance. Hands up, knees soft, bouncing on the balls of his feet. His eyes locked onto Steven's chest, reading rhythm, timing, intention. Steven stood differently. His feet were planted but not stiff. His arms hung loose, palms open. He looked relaxed, almost casual. But something about his balance felt deliberate, like a door that looked unlocked but wasn't. "Ready?" Manny asked. Steven inclined his head slightly. That was all. Manny moved first, not an attack. Just a probing step, a fast shift to the side, testing angles the way elite fighters do. His footwork was lightning quick, barely touching the floor. Steven didn't chase him. He turned slowly, calmly, always facing Manny, never crossing his feet, never rushing. Some people frowned, others leaned in closer. Manny stepped in again, faster this time, his shoulder dipping forward as if to feint a punch. Steven raised one hand, not to block, not to strike, just to guide. The movement was subtle, almost invisible. Manny felt it before he saw it, his forward momentum slightly redirected, his balance disturbed just enough to make him step back. He stopped. The room murmured. "That was nothing," someone whispered. "Just a misstep." Manny nodded, smiling, but his eyes sharpened. This time, Manny increased the speed. He darted in from the side, feet blurring, body angled low. In the ring, this movement broke defenses. It overwhelmed opponents before they could react. Steven waited. At the last possible second, he shifted his weight. Not backward, not sideways, but diagonally. His arm brushed Manny's forearm. His hip turned slightly, and suddenly Manny felt the ground tilt beneath him. 2 quick steps back. Not a fall, not a stumble, but enough. Enough to make Manny pause. The gym went silent. No laughter now, no whispers. Manny straightened, exhaling slowly. He looked down at his feet, then back at Steven. "You didn't push me," Manny said quietly. Steven shook his head. "You pushed yourself." A few trainers exchanged looks. "Again," Manny said. This time without a smile. Now, it wasn't curiosity, it was focus. Manny circled faster, changing rhythm, switching directions, left, right, in, out. His movement became unpredictable, layered with feints designed to draw reactions. Steven barely moved. He adjusted inches at a time. A step here, a turn there, always balanced, always ready. Then Manny went in, fast, sharp, decisive, in one smooth motion. Steven turned his wrist, guided Manny's arm, and stepped slightly offline. Manny found himself past Steven's center off balance. He caught himself, but the moment had already spoken. The gym erupted, not cheers, gasps. Manny stepped back, breathing harder now, not from exhaustion, but from realization. "This isn't speed versus speed," Manny said, nodding slowly. Steven finally smiled. "No," he replied. "It's timing versus intention." Manny laughed, shaking his head in disbelief. "You're not trying to win." Steven's smile faded back into calm. "There's nothing to win." The cameras kept rolling. Every person in that gym knew something had shifted. This wasn't a stunt. This wasn't a joke. 2 masters from different worlds were speaking the same language through movement. Manny wiped sweat from his brow and stepped back into position. "One more," he said. "Full speed." Steven nodded, and as Manny moved again, faster than before, everyone watching held their breath, because they now understood one thing clearly. This challenge was no longer about embarrassment. It was about respect. And whatever happened next would leave the entire room stunned. No one expected Steven Seagal to speak. The gym was loud, heavy bags thudding, shoes squeaking on the floor, cameras clicking non-stop. Manny Pacquiao stood in the center, moving effortlessly, his punches sharp and precise. Every motion carried the confidence of a man who had conquered the world inside the ring. People watched in awe. Then, from the edge of the room, a calm voice cut through the noise. What if speed isn't everything? Heads turned. Steven Seagal stepped forward. The room went quiet. Not silent, but tense. Curious. Confused. A movie star? Here, some laughed under their breath. Others raised their phones. Manny turned, smiling politely. You mean in boxing? He asked. Steven didn't smile back. His face was relaxed, almost unreadable. In movement, he replied. In control. The laughter grew louder. Someone whispered. Is this a joke? Another said. He's about to get embarrassed. Steven took one more step forward. I'd like to challenge you, he said calmly. That's when the room froze. Not because of anger, not because of arrogance, but because of the way he said it. No trash talk, no raised voice, no ego, just certainty. Manny blinked, surprised. The media leaned in, cameras zoomed closer. A few trainers exchanged nervous glances. A challenge, Manny asked again? Yes, Steven said. Friendly, no strikes. The gym buzzed. People laughed openly now. A boxing legend, challenged by an actor. One man shook his head. This is going to be bad. Steven glanced around the room, unbothered. He wasn't here to prove fame. He wasn't here to win applause. He was here to test something. Manny studied him for a moment. The smile faded, not into anger, but curiosity. What kind of challenge? Manny asked. Steven raised his hand slowly. Not in a boxer's stance, not aggressive. Loose, balanced. Just movement, he said. The laughter stopped. Something about Steven's posture changed the air in the room. Trainers stopped talking. Even the cameras steadied. Manny nodded slowly. All right, he said friendly. People leaned forward. No one expected what was about to happen, because in the next few seconds, everything they believed about speed, strength, and control was about to be questioned. And when it was over, this gym would never forget that moment again. Long after the cameras stopped rolling and the internet moved on to the next headline, the lesson remained. Not in the comments, not in the debates, but in the quiet moments where real growth happens. For Manny Pacquiao, that moment in the gym never faded. It followed him into training camps, into late night road work, into the stillness before sparring rounds. Not as doubt, but as clarity. He no longer chased speed the way he once did. He listened to it. He began noticing small things, the tension in his shoulders, the rhythm of his breath, the way momentum could betray even the fastest fighter if it wasn't understood. Slow down, his coach said one day. Manny smiled. I am, he replied. That's why I'm faster. Across the world, Steven Seagal returned to his own routines, teaching quietly, training without cameras, speaking only when needed. When asked once why he never followed up on the viral moment, he answered simply, the lesson wasn't for the world. It was for the moment. That line circulated almost as widely as the original clip. In gyms everywhere, fighters began experimenting, not trying to copy what they saw, but trying to feel it. They stopped forcing exchanges. They stopped proving. They started understanding. A veteran trainer summed it up perfectly. Power isn't about how hard you go, it's about how little you waste. Manny carried that truth forward. In his next public appearance, a reporter asked, did that moment change how you see yourself? Manny paused. Yes, he said. It reminded me that mastery isn't a destination, it's a mindset. He looked straight into the camera. If you think you've learned everything, he added, you've already stopped growing. The room went quiet. That answer spread far beyond boxing fans. Teachers shared it. Coaches quoted it. Parents sent it to their kids. Because the lesson wasn't about fighting, it was about humility. Steven Seagal never claimed superiority. Manny Pacquiao never claimed defeat. That's why the moment mattered. In a world obsessed with winners and losers, they chose something rarer: mutual respect. One evening, months later, Manny was asked by a young fighter, "Who was the hardest opponent you ever faced?" Manny thought for a moment, then smiled. "Myself," he said. The young fighter looked confused. Manny explained, "My ego wanted to prove something that day. My discipline wanted to learn. Discipline won." That answer never made headlines, but it stayed with everyone who heard it. And that was the real victory. Because strength isn't always visible, wisdom isn't always loud. And the most powerful lessons often arrive without force. What happened in that gym wasn't a challenge. It wasn't a stunt. It wasn't even a competition. It was a reminder. A reminder that true mastery listens before it speaks. That real confidence doesn't need applause. And that growth begins the moment we stop trying to dominate and start trying to understand. So the next time you find yourself rushing, trying to prove, trying to win, remember this moment. Remember that sometimes the strongest move is not to strike, but to stand still and let clarity take control. Long after the story faded from trending pages, one question remained. Why did this moment matter so much? There was no knockout, no trophy, no winner declared. Yet millions felt something shift when they watched it. Because what stunned everyone wasn't the movement. It was the humility. In a world addicted to dominance, Seagal didn't dominate. In a sport built on victory, Manny Pacquiao didn't defend his ego. Instead, both chose something rarer than strength. They chose understanding. Most people believe power is loud, that confidence must be proven, that respect is taken, but that gym revealed a different truth. Real power doesn't rush. Real confidence doesn't explain itself. Real respect doesn't need an audience. Steven never raised his voice. Manny never made excuses. And that's why the moment lived on. Because deep down, people recognize something they rarely see. Two masters allowing themselves to learn from each other, not to win, but to grow. That lesson reached far beyond fighters and fans. It reached people struggling with pride at work. Parents arguing with children, leaders mistaking authority for wisdom. It reminded them that strength isn't about control over others. It's about control over yourself. Manny could have brushed it off. Steven could have chased fame from it. Neither did. And that silence spoke louder than any speech. Months later, someone asked Manny, "Would you do it again?" He smiled. "Every day," he said, "if it helps me stay humble." That answer said everything, because humility isn't weakness, it's awareness. It's knowing that no matter how far you've climbed, there's always more to understand. Steven once said something quietly to a student after the gym had emptied. "The moment you think you've arrived," he said, "you've already stopped moving." That single sentence explains why what happened stunned everyone. Not because of skill, not because of reputation, but because two men showed the courage to remain students. And that courage is rare. So what's the real takeaway? It's not about martial arts. It's not about boxing. It's not about Steven Seagal or Manny Pacquiao. It's about you. It's about how you respond when challenged, how you act when no one is cheering, how you listen when your ego wants to speak. Because one day, you'll face a moment like that gym. A moment where pushing harder won't help. Where proving yourself won't work, where only calm and awareness will guide you forward. And when that moment comes, remember this story. Remember that speed isn't always the answer, that power isn't always force, and that sometimes the strongest move you can make is to pause, listen, and learn. That's what stunned everyone. Not the challenge, not the technique,